Hello and welcome to Buy Africa, the show where we focus on investment opportunities around the continent. I'm Tshepo, Modiba. Thanks for joining me. Tonight, Mr. Africa is back in the studio. Langa Madonko, investment principal at Africa Strategic Impact Fund, that's a mouthful, for a closer look at the Casablanca Stock Exchange in Morocco, Africa's third largest bourse after the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and the Nigerian Stock Exchange in Lagos. Langa, Morocco, firstly, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start out, before we delve into the stock exchange itself, let's start with the economy. Your takes on Morocco?
Morocco is a beautiful country, some great tourist destinations to visit when you're up there in North Africa. An economy that's quite diverse and resilient. One of the few countries that didn't have to go through the whole Arab Spring issues a while back.
Why is that?
I think one of the things is the people there generally are happy people, and the government has made an effort to make sure that as much of the development that happens in the country is not concentrated just in Casablanca, but has spread out. I mean, even the big companies have made an effort to say, look, when we're developing new plants, let's not concentrate ourselves predominantly around the main towns or around ports or what have you. They've spread themselves out. Brilliant infrastructure that allows for this, robust banking and financial sector that allows also for them to be in such a strong position.
And the key drivers of the economy?
The key drivers of the economy, it's quite a diverse economy. The services sector itself, inclusive of financial services, inclusive of sectors such as energy in that space, very good. But also they've got a strong manufacturing base, as evidenced by the number of cement manufacturers that are in the country and listed on the exchange, which is about 81 listed companies. As well as they've got a good agricultural sector that's in developing and growing in the country.
And from I guess a growth perspective, is this an economy that's doing quite well?
It's an economy that's doing quite smartly. They've started to look at the opportunities that present themselves, particularly in the region. And one of the reasons why their Bourse is so large is because a lot of the companies that are on the Bourse are actually owned by international firms that have seen the opportunity in the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, as well as an opportunity to go further southwards, going into West Africa from Morocco, which is stable and has all the aspects that an international investor would be looking for. So,
in essence, investing in the market is almost a regional play?
It is really a regional play, but also Morocco itself, let's say you isolated it from everywhere else, the entities that are listed on the exchange and the private equity players that are doing just Morocco themselves are doing reasonably well. Margins, particularly in sectors like agriculture and manufacturing, significantly higher than you would get in the same sectors anywhere else in the continent.
Okay, let's talk the market. Third largest market in the continent. That would probably shock a lot of people.
Yeah.
Any interesting ideas that creep up for you?
I think one of the things that they've done well is that they have blended the regulation. They've gone for a mix of what is international and what makes sense for the local economy. And that has stimulated the growth of the market. Not so large a Bourse in terms of the number of listed entities. I mean, they've only got 81. And then they've got 91 registered securities traders.
So it's really a function of the stocks themselves being quite big.
Yes, it's a function of that and their ability to attract foreign direct investment. And then, of course, with the opportunity to go into the rest of the region and also downwards towards the West Africa region, they've been able to then go on capital raises that have attracted a lot of capital, even from rights issues to existing investors are always well subscribed.
Okay, we'll probably, knowing you, we'll start with financial services. Any other interesting banks that you'd like to talk about?
I think they've got a good banking sector, and I know that was a trap because The bank that I like, my favorite bank in the whole of Morocco is the largest bank there, Attijara Wafa.
Yeah, that's a proper mouthful.
Yeah, but it's a good bank. Majority, 47% owned by SNI, which is the investment company owned by the king. It's a bank that is involved in commercial banking, investment banking, asset management, and in investment management. About 34 billion in assets with a net income of about $554 million last year. It's a bank that has offices in almost 14 other countries, inclusive of countries in Europe, the Middle East, and in Asia. They've really done well in terms of the development of their bank and how they've done it. It's one of the older banks as well, but it has managed to continually evolve and move with the times in terms of where Morocco is and where Moroccan business people are, and also to have a firm understanding of who's investing in Morocco, which is why then you have them having offices in London and Paris, where the majority of their FDI comes from.
And the retail book, is the retail book quite big?
The retail book is considerable because in terms of retail banking as well as commercial banking, they are the largest bank. I think in terms of market share in that space, they account for about 40 to 42% of the national banking services as a provider. And they are a company that looks set to grow. One of the plays that we are looking out for is to see when they start converting their rep offices into branches in the other countries where they have a presence.
Right. And in terms of, I guess, Moroccan banking industry, what does the banking penetration look like?
The banking penetration in Morocco is comparable to most African countries, but slightly better. They sit around 40-odd%. The reason for that being that one of the things, like I said, the infrastructure development in Morocco is a little bit more expansive in terms of they've penetrated other territories beyond just the main cities. And it's one of the places where some of the other players, like the telecoms players, are trying to now bring in advanced methodology around mobile banking.
Right.
And it's also benefited from some of the developments that have come from other parts of the region, like methods of banking that have been developed by Algeria and some that have been developed by Senegal. So it becomes the place of convergence for those new technologies.
Okay. Does this mean that from a potential growth perspective, there's good prospects? There's
good prospects, but I think, again, it's one of those with the Africa story where sometimes you get Arab Springs and then you get pockets of conflict in certain parts. You need to manage and be very strategic in terms of what your next growth frontiers are. And I think they've been smart in terms of the selection of where they've put up representative offices. Like I said, it's the conversion from rep office to fully licensed bank that one needs to manage and navigate very carefully.
And from a profitability perspective, is this a bank that does quite well?
It does exceptionally well. In Morocco, I think it is the most profitable bank, and I think on the exchange, literally by market capitalization, it is ranked second. Yeah.
So summing up, I take it this is one that you like quite a bit.
I think it's my first preference in terms of any investment that I would make in Morocco.
Okay. Yeah. Moving on to any other sectors that you'd like to touch on?
I think maybe we can talk about telecoms, because it ties in closely with where banking is going in the future.
With the mobile banking.
Yeah. Well, the largest stock by market cap in Morocco is Maroc Telecoms. If you check on the Bourse, its trading code is IAM, and that's a historic tie to its previous name, which again is another mouthful and will allow viewers to Google. But then it evolved over time and now is owned 53% by Telesat. Yeah. A big and good business for them, highly profitable, very low gearing in terms of their balance sheet for a telecoms business, which is infrastructure intensive. It has an exposure in the internet space, it has an exposure in mobile phones, it has exposure also in the landline business.
Now, what's the key theme here? Is it still voice a significant portion of their revenue, or are we seeing the global trend, which is an increase or a larger portion going to data?
I think the backstory behind all telecoms in Africa is where were we last year and where were we 5 years ago. And with Morocco 5 years ago, last year, they're still trying to catch up in terms of voice. So voice is one of the sectors that continues to give them growth, particularly in the mobile technology space. But however, data is a big driver of growth as well, because now when you start to move away from your Nokia 3310s to your Samsung S6s, you start to have that drive and that push where you are starting to get people being able to do online banking, being able to access information off their cell phones. So Morocco has been one of the drivers in terms of the availability of internet.
And in terms of competition to specifically the banking sector from a mobile banking perspective, is this an area that they're looking to take advantage of?
I think most of the telecoms players right now see a lot of growth opportunities in being niche in telecoms and offering a support service and infrastructure for banking.
So the growth prospects are still quite good, so they don't need to compete with the banks.
They don't need to compete with the banks. They more of augment the opportunity that the banks see in terms of mobile distribution of money. While it is also important to mention that we foresee a situation whereby maybe in the near future, one of the things that will need to happen is that there will have to be definite tie-ups between certain banks and certain mobile operators, so that you know that, for example, that Morocco offers a platform for a particular bank, as we have seen with some affiliations that have happened here locally.
Okay, now putting that together in terms of the numbers, what does this mean for margins? What does it mean for growth prospects?
I think efficiency is the first question that you have to answer. I think some of the issues that need to go into there is the continued development of infrastructure. Morocco, one of the first countries to get an undersea cable to bring fiber optics and so on and so on. But there's still more scope in terms of making it a more efficient systems in terms of how you reach your population, in terms of infrastructure sharing with some of the other players and that type of integration. If we can improve the efficiency, we can improve the margins. I think the telecom space is one of the areas where the margins are good, but they could be great.
Okay. And to sum up, is this one that you like?
It's one that I like.
Okay. We sound very bullish on Morocco. I like this.
Yeah.
I like this. I'll leave it there. Thanks to my guest, Langa Madonko, Investment Principal at Africa Strategic Impact Fund, otherwise known as Mr. Africa. That's all for Buy Africa this week. Remember to follow me on Twitter. That's at Modiba_Tshepo. And send us your thoughts about the show using the hashtag Buy Africa. For myself and the team, goodbye.